much for joining us. I'm Georgia, for those of you who have not got to meet in person. I'm an employee engagement and wellbeing consultant, and of course joined by Dr. Gracie. Dr. Gracie is a clinical psychologist and founder of Brain Body Wealth, and we're really pleased to be joining you today. We've only got half an hour, so we will get into our conversation quite quickly, I suppose. But before we do, we really just wanted to kind of take a moment to really just acknowledge that we've all chosen to be here for the next half an hour. So really just choosing to set ourselves up for success. So I know that we're obviously, here facilitating this, having conversation through the screen and through our devices, but as much as possible, see if you can turn away from any of those distractions. So whether it is just shutting down those multiple tabs that you have on your screen, or turning your email notifications off, or if you have one of these wonderful devices that we all, I know myself, seem to carry with me for most of the day, maybe it's just popping it to the side of the room, making sure it's on do not disturb, just so you can really be present in the space and for the conversation. And with that being said, fully recognize that, some of us are joining from perhaps a busy morning, or if you're joining on record, perhaps it has been a busy day so far. So we really just wanted to take a moment to let ourselves sort of land in the conversation and in the space. So we'll go through a really, really quick practice. If you're happy to do so, please do, take part. It's a nice moment just to press pause. And all I'd ask you to do is, if you're in your chair, if you're at your desk, maybe uncross through your legs, let the soles of the feet just land down to the ground. Take a moment just to kind of get situated, get settled into your space. And from there, just notice if you can let the spine kind of lengthen just that little bit taller, maybe soften the shoulders down away from the ears. And then if you're happy to, maybe close down the eyes. If that's not for you today, that's all good. Maybe just taking your gaze to something down to your lap, maybe down to your desk, something that's not moving, something that's not going to distract you. And we'll take a moment just to settle our attention and our awareness inwards, and we'll do that just by taking a moment to catch our breath, by taking 3 deep breaths together. So take a moment just to locate your breath in your body, and maybe it's just noticing that natural movement of the breath, that natural lift of the belly or the ribs or the chest as you breathe in, and that natural softening and that natural release as you breathe out. And together we'll take 3 breaths. So when you're ready, take a breath in through the nose, fill up through the belly, through the ribs, through the chest, and a big releasing breath out through the mouth. So we'll take 2 more there. So a full inhale and a nice big exhale. Lovely. Last one. Biggest, deepest breath you've taken yet today. And a big sigh out through the mouth. Really let something go. To the end of that breath, you can let your breath land into a natural rhythm and rate. Take a moment just to check in, just to notice how you feel. Acknowledge what might be present for you in the moment. And then when you're ready, without feeling the need to rush, you can let your eyes just gently blink open and take your time just to settle into the space.
Thank you, Georgia.
Of course, no worries. Always find it helpful. I think we spend so much time on the screen, don't we? And it's like you're darting from one meeting to the next, or one conversation to the next, and it's quite challenging sometimes to switch our mind from one situation, one conversation to the next. So I always find that's helpful. So I hope it's helpful for everyone as well.
Absolutely. I know I found it really helpful. That sort of jumping in and just sort of going into another meeting is really tricky, isn't it? So yeah, I really appreciated that. Thank you. And also I think just the normal nerves that I was feeling, it's really helped to kind of ground me and just make me feel a little bit calmer. But yeah, thank you so much. There's been a few more people arrive, so just to say hello and thank you so much for joining. I know George and I really appreciate it. Is it worth, do you think, Georgia, should I just crack on with starting the conversation? Does that feel useful?
Yeah, that sounds great. For sure.
So Georgia and I often, well, we've been working together, but also we often catch up and have a bit of a conversation about mental health, how we're feeling, what's going on for us. And one of the things that came up for us was just this sense of feeling a little bit all over the place, really technical term, feeling quite overwhelmed with sort of where we are right now, and just sort of summer coming to an end, and the idea of sort of that back to school feeling. I haven't been at school for quite some time, but there's still that sense that sort of September's here, need to get organised, kind of get back into a schedule. And we were sort of planning, or sort of, I suppose, just fell into this conversation about, right, well, what do we need to do to help ourselves feel less overwhelmed, a bit all over the place, and feel more grounded? And we thought it might be helpful to actually have this conversation with more people, or share this conversation with others, because I sort of knew that I wasn't the only one feeling it, and from talking with other people, they also were feeling it too. So that was sort of the idea behind sort of putting it out there. So it's really lovely to see so many of you here, but I know lots are going to be listening to the recording as well, so thank you so much for that, and we really do hope that you take something from it. So as a psychologist, I always potentially overthink things a little bit, or try to make sense of what's going on and try to draw on that background. And I suppose for me, in spring, summer comes up and I'm so ready for that change of pace and that time off. Summer feels a bit freer as well. I don't know if that's the same for you guys, or you not. And I suppose what comes up is then when I get to summer, I really enjoy the slower pace. So my work tends to get a bit quieter. Apparently people don't typically need their therapist as much in the summer, but also the companies that I work for, people are often on leave, so things quieten down a bit. But also for me, so it's a time where I take holiday, I potentially socialize a bit more, and just kind of my day-to-day routine sort of slip a little bit, which I think is needed. But after some time of being in summer and in that mode, I tend to notice the impact that it's having on me. And I suppose from a psychological standpoint is that our brains really thrive off of consistency and predictability. And for me, my summer is anything but consistent and predictable. Things are changing all of the time, and something crops up, and you just sort of go with it. And so kind of knowing that, but also knowing that anxiety thrives when we don't have that predictability, when things are unclear or unstructured, sort of anxiety is going to be around. So that's potentially why we might be feeling a little bit wobbly right now, because the usual things that contain us aren't there, and so that anxiety is going to creep in and just unsettle us slightly. I also think that in the summer, because my routine goes, that I'm more likely to then unprioritize the things that typically keep me well. So for instance, I know that my exercise regime goes out the window. I was just telling Georgia that I haven't been to Pilates all summer, and I went to my first class today, so I'm feeling really proud of myself. But I think it's been about 6 or 7 weeks since I last went, so really poor show there. I still probably exercise, but just not as consistently or as focused as I would when I'm in sort of a more structured place. I also know that my eating habits change slightly, so I socialize a lot more and do that through kind of eating with people, and so I'm typically kind of eating more rich foods, likely to be having ice cream and things like that, none of which is necessarily a bad thing, but over time will definitely I sort of notice it takes its toll a little bit. I'm also more likely to drink a bit more alcohol over the summer. Again, not a bad thing, something I do enjoy, but I know the knock-on impact of that is that even if I've had a glass or two, the next day I'm going to be feeling a bit more tired, my mind's going to be foggier, and it's just going to be harder to motivate myself. And all of those things that I've just spoken about are going to impact our sleep. So I know that my sleep cycle at the moment is slightly skewed. I'm a bit more restless in the night, waking up a bit more, and that's just a knock-on impact of all of those things that I've spoken about. But all of those together impact how I'm feeling. So I know day to day that I'm not feeling my best self right now. And that's because I've not been looking after myself as much as I usually do and would like to. So kind of that's how I've made sense of why I'm here. But I know for other people it's really different. I know if you're a parent and you've got children off on the school holidays, things are a bit more chaotic. You've got to juggle a lot more. But yes, there's so much going on for everybody. So that's sort of just a snippet from me and why I think kind of I'm where I am. Georgia, I don't know if anything there sort of kind of resonates with you, or if you're sort of there's something different for you coming up.
Yeah, no, that definitely all resonates. And I think the thing to acknowledge as well is that we all feel slightly different in this moment. And that's, of course, normal. And that's okay. Like, we have different roles and responsibilities, whether that's inside of work or outside of work. I wanted to share, actually, I took my niece to this fairground situation thing park over the weekend, and we went on the bumper cars. And I was actually just reflecting on the fact that that's sometimes how I feel when I feel a little bit unsettled. It's like I'm kind of in control of the bumper car. I kind of know where I want to go, but I've got things hitting me like left, right, and center. And sometimes it's like a little bump and it just sends me a little bit off course. And sometimes it's like a big, whack of a bumper car, and it really kind of throws me off course and makes me feel, really quite unsteady. So absolutely, resonate with everything that you're saying, Dr. Gracie. And I think, what we wanted to do is really just share some tools, tips, practices just from our own experiences and things that sort of help us, gain that steadiness and like help to find our feet on the ground and help to just, bring us back a little bit in those moments, because, it happens to all of us. We will get thrown off. There's so much happening, particularly at this time of year. So yeah, that's what we wanted to do. And I think the first thing I suppose that we did want to share is, it's right that we did what we did right at the start of this session is, firstly, pressing pause and really taking that moment to kind of acknowledge where we're at, acknowledge how we're feeling. But that takes practice and it takes action and accountability somewhat, because it's not enough just to, train ride into, your commute in the morning, take 3 deep breaths, okay, cool, I'm good to go for the rest of the day. I think for me, it's really about finding these almost like natural kind of punctuation points in the day where I can take those moments to check in, like whether it is between meetings or between calls, or when I'm getting up to make a cup of tea, like rather than taking my phone with me and checking my emails, like also just taking a moment, just okay, what's going on? What have I got happening? Like, how can I prioritize myself? And it does take practice. I think, Dr. Gracie, maybe you'll agree with me. Like, it's not, you have to constantly remind yourself to take that moment to check in. Yeah. I think, 3 deep breaths is super easy. It's nothing particularly challenging. And, the breath's amazing because it's a tool that we have with us all the time. Like, you can take those 3 deep breaths wherever you are, and it really helps me to kind of shift my mind away from that, catastrophizing, and away from that overthinking, and really just pull me back into the present moment. So it's a really simple one, but quite, pressing pause, checking in, and really being proactive with that.
Absolutely. And I think just to add to that, I spoke earlier about that anxiety is likely to be creeping around at the moment, and taking our breath and or taking back control of our breath and slowing that down is a really good way of tricking your brain into thinking that you are calm and no longer in that anxious state, or it will sort of shift you from. So that's sort of one of the reasons why I think it's really important. But I also know for me, if I don't pause and continue as I am at the moment, it's likely that my thoughts are going to be more negative. They're going to be, like you say, catastrophizing. I'm going to be sort of potentially quite cruel to myself. Why can I not get anything done at the moment? Why am I being so rubbish at work, or whatever might come up for me? And that's likely to be the anxiety speaking. So if I pause, take a breath, and just ground myself, the likelihood is that I will park that anxiety and be able to connect with healthy, calmer me, who's then going to make some better decisions and probably work a bit better. So yeah, I just wanted to add that in. But also that then the top tip 2, number 2, is recognizing what we might need in these moments. So I've mentioned all of the things that I've stopped doing, or doing less of, or doing that isn't particularly helpful. But we are all quite different in what our needs are. So for instance, at the moment, I know that I need to up my level of structure. So that is blocking my diary of certain things, booking in my gym classes. I'm going to be making sure that I sort of get my food shop prepped and planned, so my meals are kind of organized, all those things, because I know that I need containment from structure. But also that by adding that structure, it means that I'm likely to meet the needs that I'm my unmet needs, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say. So I will be eating better, I will be moving more, those sort of things. But without taking that time to pause and reflect on what we do need, it's likely that we won't then get our needs met, I suppose. We're just going to bumble along, or we think we might need something and it might not actually be what we need in this moment. So when I think it's important when we think about reflecting on what we need, I'd potentially think about kind of, if you were to nurture yourself, what is it that you need more of with regards to nurture? So that might be moving more, it might be resting more, it might be fueling yourself better, all of those kind of things. If we think about nurture, what is there? Another thing to think about is connection. I suppose with summer, I find I probably connect a lot with lots of people, and I probably need to rein that in. My social battery is potentially a little bit low, and I probably need to plug myself in a little bit. And I know, Georgia, you've sort of mentioned this before, that actually for you've done lots of connecting over the summer, and actually that's quite exhausting and quite draining. And so actually what you need is potentially some time, just you, and looking after you. I hope you don't mind me sharing that.
No, not at all. That's exactly, I think so. Dr. Gracie and I had a call yesterday, and I was like, I just had a really, really busy weekend and I didn't get any time to myself. And it's fantastic. I did get that element of connection, but I also need that time to myself, and I didn't get any of it. And I think it's just really interesting as well, just to notice the difference in how I feel generally. And it's not just tiredness from a busy weekend. It's, that sense of overwhelm in a way. And it's not through work, it's through just doing too much, quite literally. So I think it's exactly that. It's like noticing how you feel in different situations and scenarios, and really kind of recognizing what you need.
Yeah, absolutely. So pausing, taking some time to recognize what you need in these moments or these next few days and weeks to get you back to where you want to be. And the final point that we wanted to share with you, that I think for me is really important and often potentially sort of ignored, is that I suppose the two things we've shared for you aren't necessarily groundbreaking. My hope is that you are aware of the need to sort of take some time to ground yourself, pause, and consider your needs. But something often gets in the way of us doing that, and we often get in our own way of looking after ourselves. And from conversations I have a lot of the time, often within the therapy room, but also out of the therapy room, is just this idea of struggling to prioritize our own needs. I think we're often very good at prioritizing the needs of those around us, looking after our family and our friends, and doing things for other people, or prioritizing sort of our workload and what have you. And that's not to say that you shouldn't be doing that, but I think we often do it at the expense of ourselves. And I suppose I just really wanted us to take a moment to connect with the idea that you are really important in all of this. For you to be able to care for those around you and do your job well, you've got to be standing, you've got to be in a good space yourself. And so you really deserve to look after you and prioritize you. So I just want you to sort of really connect with that. Are you somebody that struggles with that? And why is that? What are some of the narratives that might be coming up for you? Because you really do deserve this. You deserve to feel calm and good in yourself, and you deserve to be looking after you. So I suppose our hope was that today we can just get you to really empower yourselves. I mean, you've done it already by turning up or by listening later if you are. So that's huge, well done. But it goes a little bit further than this. Listening is the easiest bit. We've actually now got to action it, which I think is the hardest bit. I could sit here all day telling you all the fabulous ways that we can what we can do to make ourselves better, but actually doing those things is really tricky. So yeah, our final tip was sort of, please prioritize you. You deserve it. And the impact on you and everyone around you will be so much better for it. So yeah, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, Georgia.
I think the only thing I was going to add is that, and and I recognize this a lot in myself, is knowing that things, of course, are shifting and changing all of the time. And it really is like this constant practice of coming back and, okay, recognizing, just as Dr. Gracie says, what do I need in this moment? That might not be the same as it was last week. Things change, things move. And really just like that practice of coming back to yourself again and again and again. And we use this word practice all of the time because it's hard to get things perfect. I think, with every will in the world, you can set up like structure and, this foundation of support for yourself, but it is a practice because it's just this idea of keep like coming back, trying, recognizing what works when you feel a certain way, recognizing what doesn't, and really like prioritizing yourself. So yeah, thank you for that, Dr. Gracie.
No problem at all. We've got sort of around 6 minutes.
Okay.
I'm wondering, is it worth you sharing a quick practice with us again, a really tangible one, and then we can wrap it up? What do you reckon?
That sounds great. It's always really funny how quick these things go. And I know Dr. Gracie and I can talk for a long time, but we'll pause it there, and I will guide you through a short practice, I suppose. And of course, I'll guide you through the whole thing, but I want you to kind of take away this idea that these practices don't always need to be guided. It'll make sense as I guide you through, but mindfulness isn't about clearing your thoughts from your mind entirely. That's pretty much impossible. Our minds are meant for like this mental sort of stimulation and meandering. So like that's going to happen naturally. The practice of mindfulness really offers us this moment to check in, and it's this practice of presence. So noticing how we feel, what we're thinking, what's going on in our environment, but noticing it and taking a step back rather than, getting involved in it. So that's kind of what I hope the practice will do. But we'll start in the same way. So get yourself nice and comfy in your space. I always recommend uncrossing the legs just so you can get the sense of grounding and support from the soles of your feet. Let your sit bones kind of meet your chair. Maybe it's the back of your body supported by the chair behind you as well. And then again, if you are comfortable, you can let the eyes just gently close down. And of course, if that's not for you, that's okay, but choose something in front of you just to let your gaze land lightly upon. And take that moment just to kind of notice a sense of structure and support from the surface below you. See if you can invite a little bit of softening through the body as well. Maybe that's just letting the shoulders drop just that little bit further away from the ears, or softening through the jaw or the cheekbones or the space behind the eyes. And as we settle into our practice, we can start by building a strong sense of place. So even with the eyes closed or maybe the gaze fixed, we can recognize where we're situated in space. So perhaps you're in a room that is quite familiar to you, whether that's somewhere at home, somewhere at work. But can you use your imagination almost to step out of your body and picture exactly where you are situated? And that might be in relation to the walls or the window, the door, the floor, perhaps the ceiling. Any other objects that are sharing the space, perhaps other people. As we start to build that picture and that awareness, we can also engage in our sense of hearing. So perhaps recognizing sounds that are inside the room or just outside the room. You can label the sounds if you like, but see if you can also recognize the pitch or the texture or the speed or the cadence. You might tune into your sense of smell or your sense of taste. And then moving to our sense of touch. So once again, noticing how your physical body is supported by the structure below you or behind you. So if you can be really specific with those points of contact. So noticing the sit bones, the seats, maybe the back body. And then allowing your attention just to drift to your breath. And without changing your breath for the moment, see if you can just be aware of that natural movement of the breath in the body. It might be that natural movement and fluctuation in the belly or the ribs as the chest as you breathe in. And that sense of softening and release as you breathe out. And if it helps you to connect to your breath as well, you might place one hand over your belly or over your chest. Get them all together. We will take those 3 breaths again, but we'll take them in our own time. So when you're ready, see if you can take the breath all the way down into the belly. And find that releasing breath out. We'll take 2 more just there. So in your own time, full and expansive breath in. And a releasing sigh out. And the last one, when you're ready, biggest, deepest breath in. And a breath out. As when you meet the end of your final exhale there, allow the breath just to settle back into its natural rhythm and rate. Take that moment again just to check in. Notice how you feel physically, emotionally, energetically. And then maybe keeping the eyes closed, you can start to invite a little bit of movement just to the edges of the body, into the fingertips and the toes and the ankles and the wrists. Maybe a little shift out through the head and the neck and the shoulders. And then taking your time when you're ready, you can let your eyes just gently blink open and take your time just to, again, land back into the space. Don't feel like you need to rush back to the brightness of the screen. Take the time that you need. I hope that was helpful. Thank you all for being here, for taking part.
Thank you so much. I feel really calm now. So thank you so much, Georgia. That was really lovely. Thank you all so much, as Georgia just said, for joining. I'm just going to put our final slide on. It has been really lovely to see some of you here and hopefully those listening and watching back as well, that you've all taken something from it. It's been really lovely just to see those comments in the chat as well. So thank you so much for sharing your reflections. Georgia and I are hoping to do this a little bit more regularly, potentially sort of once a month on a different topic, with sort of a practice, mindfulness practice as well. So we would really love to see you all there, but we'll put more details of that on our social media pages, and potentially email you out. So yeah, just keep an eye. And if there is any like mental health topics that you think you'd love to know more about, do let us know and we can definitely guide it. Or kind of put a webinar on for that as well. We're also hoping to be really brave and go on Instagram and do an Instagram live next week. Only a short 15 minutes where we're just going to do a brief mindfulness practice and then potentially share sort of a psychology tip or reflection or what have you. So yeah, join us on Instagram for that, because we would love to see you, if we're brave enough.
We will be.
We will be.
You're
But
all
yeah,
holding us accountable now.
that's it, exactly. So, but yeah, just a really huge thank you from us to you, and we hope you found it useful, and we will potentially see you at future webinars and events and things. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you all ever so much. Really appreciate you taking the time to be here, and yeah, hopefully see you all again soon.
Thank you, everybody. Take care. Thank you we've run over slightly.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Philippa. Lovely to see you.
I'm gonna stop recording.